I'm ready to show the walkthrough for the tasks from the CTF. So the task is called multi-brood. Description is of the task that the target has encrypted zip file with the user's password hash. So our question is get the flag from user's home folder. We see that it has the website running. First we have to check if it's there. Yeah, looks like port 80 is responding, so we have the website behind that. So first thing, before solving most of the web targets or web tasks, you have to do the enumeration of the target. There are different tools that you can use. They have more or less the same idea. You have the dictionary of the folders, of the file names, and you have the program which will run all this dictionary records against the target machine. So in our case, we will check the first well-known brute forcing software called Nikto. So the syntax is pretty straightforward. Nikto is a command name, -h is the flag, and after the flag we have to put the IP address of the target. So in our case it's 10.61.32.134, and we start the first enumeration of the target. Okay, it says it's running on Apache. Version is pretty old, but we first see what are the findings of the enumeration of the web server. Okay, we see that there is some interesting directory called stats entry. Also, this is found in robots.txt file. So let's check what we have there in the browser. Oh, very familiar page. I have seen this before, and I know that this page might give you some hints to get more information about the target, because this is a usual web server statistical page that shows the requests which were requested. It shows the bytes were transferred, referrers, search engines who were accessing this page. And also this might give you information about the users who were accessing some of the web resources. So the thing is, we have to just start checking, do we have some hints or some usernames who was accessing this website. Okay, we see here we have two usernames here. Users, we name it as the user txt. And we add the usernames that we found here to the file. So one is the admin, the second username is com. But let's check some other months also for additional usernames, because these users might be non-existing, they might be removed from the system, or they might be with different permissions. So it's better to have to do all this inspection thoroughly to get list of all usernames. Okay, we found another one. So let's add also this username to our users file. We are not saving, we're checking other months as well. And we can search, because we know that this block is called as the user, so we don't have to scroll through the whole page. Nothing here. Nothing here. Two more to go. Nothing here, and maybe here. No, nothing here. So we are able to get 3 usernames from the statistical web page. When I was doing this Nikto scanning, there is also a good thing to run the different tools, because they might have some different approach how to do scannings. They might be using different dictionaries. So do not rely on one single tool. As the second tool, we will be using GoBuster. and we'll be using the directory scanning option, so which will scan the same target, and we'll see, maybe it will show us a little bit different results. So GoBuster dir -u, and we have to use some word list. We will use the standard, the common that we have. Okay, and as you can see, we have different folders and files being identified with the GoBuster. So we are not checking this 200 response code, but we are very interested in the 401. So 401 means that this site is asking for, or this folder is asking for the username and the password. It's /backup. Let's try to access from the browser. Yes, and we see that site is restricted. As usually, try the default credentials, some default passwords which might be used on the target, but nothing is working. So we are unable to get the access to that folder. So again, if we're talking about the web targets, we have enumerated the folders, the files. We got the list of the files and folders which might give us some additional information about the target, which will help us to get the final flag. And the brute forcing of the folder is one thing. The second is brute forcing of the passwords. And as you remember, we found 3 usernames from this WebAlyzer statistical page. So we want now to try to brute force these users against this backup folder. Maybe we are lucky, maybe we are able to get the access there, because usually backup folders, they have some very interesting information. Old backups, maybe some scripts which do some sort of backups on that specific machine. So for the brute forcing the passwords, we will use well-known tool called Hydra. Since we have list of usernames, we want to try to brute force all of them, not a single username. We use the capital L. We set the file name where we have the list of the users. We should supply the list or the dictionary of the passwords. So in our case, we use the default, the sec list, password lists. In this walkthrough, we will try to use this 10,000 line dictionary. Depends on the target. Sometimes you might take the smaller file, sometimes you might take the bigger file, but in first try we will use this 10,000 line dictionary. We will specify the port. In our case, it's port 80. It's HTTP GET, and now we are setting the folder which we want to brute force, and we hit enter. And okay, yeah, we need to set the target as well. Okay. It's 10.61.32.134. Okay, and we see that the brute forcing of username has started. We have 3 usernames in our file, and we have 10,000 dictionary lines. So that means in total, the brute forcing tool will run maximum 30,000 requests against the target. Brute forcing is very noisy activity. So if you do brute forcing of the username passwords, everything is checked against the target system. So that means if you submit the wrong password, all your actions will be logged. And the more usernames you have and more complex dictionary you have, the more time it will take to brute force the target machine. Everything also depends on the type of the dictionaries that you are using. It's better to use some specific dictionaries. So for example, if you know that the target is running some SSH service, it's better to use the list of usernames who are SSH user, who are some sort of Linux users. Do not use some Microsoft type users in the Linux environments. Also, the dictionary, try with a smaller one to see what type of responses you will get. Because if you take the huge dictionary and you will start right away, you might be blocked somewhere in the middle, and you will not be able to run the full scan of the whole dictionary against the target machine. So the scan is still going. Speed is yeah, we already did 1/3 of the task of the scan, so let's wait some more time. Okay, it looks like we've got the password for the user com, and the password is Roadrunner. So let's go back to this website and try to verify that they are working. So user is com, and the password we have here. Okay, very nice. We have some backup.sh script. Let's see what's inside. I will copy it to the terminal. Also, since we are using the wget, we want to supply the username and the password from the command line, Roadrunner @ Okay, let's check what we have inside the file. Okay, it looks some script, bash script, which does some of the backups. And we have even some usernames, and we have even the zip file of the /etc folder with all subfolders. And we have the SQL backup. And we have also the new path, which was not revealed by GoBuster or Nikto. So let's take first, try to see this back-up folder in the browser. Okay, it's also accessible. We don't have any SQL files here as listed in shell script, so this might be either they are copied to some other location, or the script is not functioning properly. But we have the etc.zip file here. Okay, let's download the zip file. We download with wget, and we have. So first thing, before extracting the zip files, it's a good approach just to view the content of the archive. So unzip -l will list the archive, and if we see here, it has the content of the etc folder. Very promising, very promising. So usually if you get some archives, it's better to extract the data in some separate folder. Otherwise it can get very messy in one folder if you will be extracting different files in the same folder. So for that purposes, I create the etc folder. I create and I will unzip this etc password to the new folder. Okay, it's asking for the password. So this file is showing only the names, but it's not allowing us to extract the content because it's password protected. Okay, another brute forcing is coming. So for the zip files, we have to use the tool called Potato. It's very powerful tool. So in addition to brute forcing different services like SSH, the web server, different databases, it's possible also to brute force the password protected archives with the dictionary files. So we use Potato command the command is unzip pass. Now we have to supply the file, which is in our case etc zip, and we have to use syntax a little bit messed up, etc.zip, and we have password here, and we have to supply the password file we use the same file from the sec list, password xauto, and we use the same 100,000. So we potato unzip pass zip file etc.zip, and we supply this file. Okay, it's getting too messy on the screen because it's showing all the attempts that we are trying. It's trying to take the password from the dictionary and try to use it against the password protected zip file. But we are not interested in all these invalid passwords. So with a potato, we have to write a small exclusion line which will ignore everything which is not okay. So it's -x, ignore code not equals 0. So we are only interested in the successful codes. And let's start brute forcing of this zip file. And it's already gave us some results. It shows the candidate for the password, and it shows in the message that no errors detected in compressed data of that specific file. So let's try to see if we are able to use this password, brute forced password, for that archive. And we are copy pasting, or we can type as words, and let's check. Okay, we have now some new etc folder created here, and if we check inside that folder, we see the content of the etc folder of the machine which were brute forcing and enumerating. What are the most important files if you get from the etc folder? Well, the first thing is definitely the shadow file, because the shadow file contains the hash, salted hash of the user who has some password set in that specific machine. Okay, so we have the content of the file, we have the shadow file which has the hashes for the different users. Okay, so we will take from the shadow file, we will take the web user hash and add it to the separate file and see what John the Ripper will do with that. Web shadow. Okay, let's try to run against it, and looks like we found the password for the web user, and the password is Liverpool. So first thing, if you get different type of usernames and the password, to see where this username and this password is, where it's acceptable. It can be some web resources, it can be some other services like SSH. So let's try to log in with the web user to the SSH port. Connection refused. Okay. So this is interesting that you don't have any SSH running on the default port. So one of the options that is done on that specific machine that the SSH is running on some non-standard port. And if we know that the number of ports can be like 64K, it's pretty hard to like manually try different ports. So for that, we have the next thing to enumerate the ports. So we use the nmap, we use the synscan, so we are not making the full three-way TCP handshake because we are not interested in receiving acknowledge from the machine. We don't want to establish the connection with the machine if the port is open. We are not sending any ICMP packets, so we are not pinging the machine. We are not interested. We have to scan all the ports. So -P-, this is a flag for scanning all the ports, and we are interested only in the open ports. We're currently not interested in scanning showing closed or filtered or some other ports. So let's run the scan against the target with nmap. Yeah, and we see here we have some interesting service running on the port 44322, and it's TCP. Service has some PMCD proxy. It's unknown for me. Easiest thing is to verify what's behind that port is just to telnet from your machine to the IP address and the port we have discovered, and we see the banner coming from that machine that it's running OpenSSH on the Ubuntu machine version 7.2. So this is very good finding. So now we can try to log in SSH to non-standard port, and we use the password that we received from brute forcing with the John the Ripper. Okay, we paste the password and we are in the target machine. Okay, we have limited permissions, but let's check what was the task. Get the flag from authenticated user's home folder. Okay, so we are in web user home folder. And let's check what we have, and looks there is a flag file listed in the home folder. Let's check the content of the file. Okay, it says the flag is, and we have some big random hex numbers. So let's see if this is the correct flag for the task. So we copy pasting it to this web-based ISA platform, we're submitting the answer, and it goes green. It says task solved, and we are getting 100 points for solving the task. And it's solved.